and thank you for joining us on this special recording that we're doing. We just want to be able to share with you as you're maybe getting started homeschooling or thinking about getting started homeschooling on stories of people who have actually done that and are still doing it. And so to hopefully encourage you, to let you know that this is something you can do if you have a child who struggles, that you can still homeschool, and it can be a very rewarding and wonderful experience. And my name is Peggy Ployer, and I'm the founder and CEO of SPED Homeschool. And with me today is Amy Vickrey, and Amy Vickrey is on the SPED Homeschool team. And I'm excited to interview her because she is a wealth of information and an awesome homeschool mom. And so thanks for joining us, Amy, and just sharing your story and some of the wisdom that you've gained as you have started homeschooling.
Thank you for having me here today.
Yeah. So we're just going to talk about kind of the getting started. But as we do that, why don't you introduce us to your family and who you are, who your kids are, and what led you to homeschooling over any other type of educational choice?
Yeah, definitely. I'm actually a single parent. I homeschool 2 boys now. I have a 9-year-old that has autism that I've been homeschooling since kindergarten. And I have a 4-year-old, which while we're not doing a lot of formal things this year, that he needed some things too. So we're basically working on letters, identification, and he is starting to work through some math though, because he understands those math concepts so naturally.
That's really cool. Yeah, you just kind of it seems like those younger ones, they just come along, and a lot of people get really worried. Well, I've got younger kids. What do I do? And I had the same experience as Amy had, is like, give me my books. I want to learn. I want to do the same things you're doing with my older sibling. So that's encouragement. And you know, it's really difficult to homeschool as a single parent, but I think a lot of parents now, especially with COVID, are finding themselves in having to make that decision of how do I balance all of this. And so I'm sure you're going to be talking about that more, but I just want to encourage you, if that's something that is part of your situation in diving into homeschooling, that Amy has a lot of encouragement for you. And so to kind of get us started, what led to that decision? We are going to homeschool versus let's maybe not try this, and let's stick with the traditional school approach instead of diving into the unknown.
So it started out as I had always wanted to homeschool. My younger sister was homeschooled through middle school and high school because of struggles and difficulties that she had through elementary school. And as a result of that, my parents decided to homeschool her, and I saw the experience that she had. We also had friends of the family and friends that they connected with that homeschooled, and I always really liked the idea of homeschooling. So it was always kind of in the back of my mind anyways.
Right.
In college, I majored in education, and I became a teacher, and I started teaching and taught many years in the early childhood classroom, and then moving into special education. And so I have that education background.
Yeah.
And so when my youngest got to be school age, I was actually for pre-K, we put him in school, and I let him know, okay, this is where he's at. He knew all of his letters. He knew all of his sounds, but he was struggling with rhyming. He was struggling with those tasks that are necessary for pre-reading. But he was also ready to start learning sight words. And so I asked him, I said, will you please start working with him on sight words and just kind of continue moving him forward?
Right.
They never did it. Did it. Behaviors were constantly an issue. They were calling me every day.
Right.
Saying, this happened or that happened. And he was coming home and just melting down and just having a really good time. And so by the time we got to the end of the year, I was like, what are we doing? I was like, I have the education to teach him. His dad at the time was not really on board with the idea of homeschooling. I told him, I said, look, I have the education to do this. I have probably more education, more experience than most of these teachers in the school.
Right.
Let me just try it. And so he finally agreed, let me try for the summer, at which point I joined with a lifetime membership to THSC.
Which is the Texas Homeschool Coalition.
So that was my first step to the trial for the summer. And started looking at curriculum and looking at things. And he just started making so much growth just with that one-on-one work and being able to work at his pace. And, through the next year, we finally had him diagnosed with autism. We had him found out that he was basically blind in one eye.
Wow.
He still had not chosen hand dominance, so that it actually, at 9 years old, he still does not have a dominant hand. He does do occupational therapy, and the therapist has said he's ambidextrous. Wow. Because everything she does, he is almost absolutely equal in both hands.
Wow.
He's truly ambidextrous. And I've just let him take the lead on what hand he uses for what. It's actually common in my family for I'm left-handed and ambidextrous on both sides, my side and his dad's side. So it's been quite a journey of figuring out exactly how to help him.
Right, but you had the time also to be flexible and to learn your child so that you can give him the best education. We're in a classroom setting. That just isn't possible. And even the requests you made of the teacher, they were not unreasonable requests, but when teaching 20 to 30 students, it can become a very unreasonable request just to have something different for one child. So, yeah. So as you dove into homeschooling, I'm sure a lot of people gave you advice. What do you consider as the best advice you got when you first started?
To give myself grace.
Yeah, that's a good one.
And that was actually given to me by you.
Oh.
Before I joined the SPED homeschool team, I was having a really hard time because we had just found out that he was blind in one eye, basically, and started our journey of trying to correct his vision. And I was like, how could I have missed this? And I was just really upset. And you came alongside me and said, you know what, you have to just give yourself grace. And, you have the answer now, and you are starting to work on it now, and that's okay.
Right.
And that's something I've carried with me over the last few years of dealing with us dilating his good eye so that we could bring that left eye back, and everything that we've done. And now he basically has pretty even vision with his glasses in both eyes, and it's maintaining. And his eyes are strengthening. He's able to flow across text easier, where he's starting to pick up and enjoy reading chapters and things like that. And so he's making really good progress.
Yeah, we can beat ourselves up as parents for not seeing those things that seem so obvious. And it's just a reminder that we all need. I mean, I gave that advice, but I need it back, because there are days too that I can beat myself up, and I can give good advice, but I got to take it too. And apply it. So that's definitely good to share all around. So what was your biggest challenge that you or your child or your family faced in starting the homeschooling journey? And how did you overcome that?
I think my biggest challenge starting out was doing too much. I had a lot to prove coming from the world of education, and having to prove that I could do it to his father and to his father's family, who have a lot of educational background, and they did not believe in homeschooling. And so I felt like I had a lot to prove starting out. And so I think that I tried to do more starting out than now, looking back, I'm like, well, there probably were some things I probably could have just not focused on or done less of, and we still would have been okay.
Yeah.
But, And as I went through that first year, there were some things that I kind of cut back on because it was just too much. And I, over the years, we've been homeschooling. This is our 4th year now. And I've turned more of the learning process over to him, to my oldest, in ways that allow him to take the lead and learn at his own pace in reading and learning science and social studies and things like that. I put materials around the house and in place where that he can explore on his own. And he really enjoys that. He really enjoys being able to pick up books and read books of interest on his own. And I think the biggest blessing I gave him was the fact that I worked really hard with him those first 2 years on really getting him reading. And that was our primary focus, that and math.
Right. Just those 2 core things open up so many opportunities for learning that your child can, like you said, you just give them the environment. That's correct. And kids want to learn. That's an important thing to know.
Well, and at first I was really concerned about the writing, and then as we were going through this vision process and the hand dominance issues and realizing that, he hadn't picked a dominant hand, but, he was relying completely on that right eye and then the left eye. And so going through all of that, I finally just backed off on the writing. And that was probably the best thing I could have done, because now I see him proceeding through the writing process. And this is kind of our year that we're focusing on writing. And I'm just not worried about, because the reading is taking off. He's reading on his own. I was thinking I probably should make a list and just put it in his thing of all the books he's read this year, because he's read probably over 50 beginner chapter books or chapter books, because I've been buying him books and he just devours them.
Yeah.
And so, okay, we're not getting us out of problem. He understands and comprehends, tells me all about it. And so by being able to now, reading is taken care of, we can come back and later on for more formal ways and talk about those things that he would need for testing for, when he gets to high school of, being able to do standardized testing. We can address that down the road. I'm not worried. Right now, he can just assimilate all he wants to do and gather all that information he wants to reading. But now this year, we're kind of working a little bit more on writing, and because he can get those ideas out, but writing it down is such a chore. And so working on those muscles that go into writing along with the writing process. And sometimes it's a learning process about learning to summarize. And 30 sentences, 6, because 6 is too many for him to write. He literally gets fatigued and exhausted from it.
Right.
So getting him to put it down into 3 sentences rather than the 6 sentences he really wants to write. That's our challenge, and it's a good process for him to go through to learn how to express himself more succinctly and more clearly.
And that's a skill in our day and age that is so much needed, because sound bites and little bits of information have to express so much because people's attention spans are so short. So, but I love that you point out, that there's certain things that he's progressing at, and you kind of allowed things naturally as he was able and willing, that you would then work on those things, but didn't feel like across the board he had to be, at the same level in math and writing, because a lot of our kids that struggle do. They have those peaks and valleys of learning, and we have to be able to ebb and flow with them as our kids do. And my kids were the same way.
That to me was when he colored or drew, everything was scribbled. Well, that's probably all he was seeing. And so this year, his drawing has taken on a whole nother level where his drawing actually has meaning and form, and you can actually look at it and tell, it's a dragon, or it's a tree, or whereas and that's most kids reach that stage at about 4 to 5, and here he's 9, just reaching that stage, but it's because of all the challenges he had to overcome to get to that stage.
Right.
And so, but that stage has to happen before a child can sit down and start writing words.
Yeah. Yes, there are certain steps, and if you can't skip over them. I know there's a blog definitely on our website that talks about that too. I think one of our team members a while ago wrote on different stages of writing and all of those different things. So definitely, if you have a child that's struggling to write, just do a search on our website at spedhomeschool.com for that. So there's a lot of homeschooling misconceptions, and I'm sure you had to put aside some in teaching your student. What advice do you have for parents who may be struggling with just these preconceived notions that they're bringing in to homeschooling, maybe not even realizing that they're bad things to bring in with them? And how do you just overcome the ones that you have?
So when I talk to families that are looking to homeschool, some of the things that I tell them is to, one, remember that it's not going to look like public school. It's not going to take as long. Working with a child one-on-one, or with, just even 2 or 3 listen to me, children. It's, the instruction is so much more intense. They're going to be taking things in a lot faster, but it's also more tiring on them, because when you're in a classroom and you're sitting in a group of 20 kids, things are repeated more than once. So you can kind of mentally check out and check back in and not miss a whole lot.
Right. That's a good point.
And so when you're working one-on-one, or just, even with 2 or 3 kids, they have to be on the whole time.
Right.
And it's tiring. And so after about 10, 15 minutes, they're probably going to need a break.
Yeah.
Especially if you're doing things that are back and forth. And so it's okay for it to just take 5 minutes or 10 minutes or even 15 minutes for you to get through a topic or a subject. There's nothing wrong with that. It's okay to do your whole school day and realize that you're done in 1 hour or 2 hours, and you were expecting it to take 5 or 6. Don't add more in, because you need to be able to celebrate for yourself and for your child that you worked really hard.
Right. Yeah.
And that work probably would have taken that longer amount of time in the classroom. But there's nothing wrong with finishing it faster.
Yes, and we've heard from so many parents recently, especially with COVID and so many people just trying to move the classroom and even the virtual schooling into their homes, that they're trying to replicate the entire school schedule into their homes, and for that reason, that's why you don't do an hour of a class, or even 45 minutes. Because that's a great explanation. It's the best I've heard from anybody on why that needs that 10, 15 minutes, 5 minutes, even for younger kids, is more than enough. They get that, the instruction that they need. So Amy, you have a lot of really great ideas. You've written a lot of wonderful blogs on our website, just about scheduling, organization strategies, teaching techniques. Can you just share some of your favorites?
So some people like a timer. But what I found early on with my oldest was, if I set a timer, he watched the timer. He didn't do work.
It can be distracting.
So
yes.
He thought it was great. He loved to watch the little bit. I was like, timer was not effective for him. So I found very simple checklist worked really well. And something interesting that I found was, if they were right-handed, putting the check marks on the right-hand side. And since my son was left-handed, it worked better to put the check marks on the left-hand side.
Yes.
So that you could see what you're checking off. That way they're not having to cross the page to do the checking.
Yeah.
So that was something I found with, especially with younger kids, is making sure that whatever hand dominance they have, that's where you put your checkboxes.
Yeah.
I really like the checklist. Now it's, our checklist has kind of evolved in that I hand him, instead of having a checklist and handing him one thing at a time, I can actually hand him his stack, show him his stack of whatever it is he's doing for the day. And I let him know, okay, done with these things, then you're done. Right. And so now our checklist has evolved from a list and one item at a time to here's your work for the day physically when you're done. Yeah. And that he's pretty independent on it now. I know that's a big question that parents ask is, how do I get my kid to be independent? The first step is you work at their independent level and know that if it's something that's not something they can do independently, you're going to have to be there, to help answer questions. But, we would just start out with, okay, I would tell him, okay, answer this question. And he would answer the question and immediately give him a sticker or a stamp or something. And then, I would say, okay, answer the next one. And I would walk away. And then come back. And if he had answered it, he immediately got a sticker or a stamp. And I would kind of watch to see when he would do it. Right. And if he didn't do it with like a short amount of time, I would come back and, tell him again, okay, answer the question. And as soon as he did it, I would, give him a sticker or a stamp. And we would go through this, and then I would kind of stretch it out over 2 or 3 problems. And then eventually we got to the point after a few days of doing this where he wanted to do the sticker or the stamp himself when he answered it. And so then I let him take over, doing his own reward. And now we can get through a whole page of stuff without, unless he gets stuck on something, and then, I just kind of make myself available. But as long as he doesn't, he can pretty much do a whole page of stuff completely by himself with just maybe a few, 1 or 2 reminders to, hey, make sure you're getting done. Right. And so I find that if you're working on their level and, you start out working with them and eventually you can wean them off of that and get them working independently.
That's good advice. Cause I think the way you approached it is so good that, you kind of start with not assuming any type of independence and then slowly kind of pull back and keep checking in, because once they get stuck, a lot of parents will say, I'll turn around and where did they go? Because we want them to be so independent so quickly. And that's just, it's a progression. It's not something that all of a sudden happens just overnight.
And we have our days when the great Houdini appears and he is not there anymore. So.
I still have that with my 16-year-old. If I walk away from math for too long, I'm like, okay, I'm going to go take a couple things out of the dishwasher on just the other side of the island. But know that you can ask the question while you're working on this, because otherwise, she'll just get frustrated and say, ugh, whenever you come back, I'll come back too. Well, that isn't the goal. So, yeah. Communication.
Right. It doesn't matter how old your kid is. This is something they all struggle with because, they struggle, they get frustrated, and they shut down. And so, knowing how to regain that independence and teaching them how to ask for help when they need it is so important. Yeah, I completely agree. That's awesome. And I know you have that checklist with the left hand check marks. If you look under left hand on the SPED Homeschool website, you'll actually see a picture of Amy's checklist. So you can find that there, and just the kind of the process. I remember it was an aha moment for you when you wrote that. So, but we all have aha moments as parents as we're homeschooling. And as a trained teacher, do you find that you're having just as many aha moments as every other homeschool parent? If not more. There are some things that you do have to kind of overcome, because, again, making sure it doesn't look like homeschool. Giving yourself permission to change. If something's not working, don't continue to do it.
Mm-hmm.
What can you change about what you're doing? What can you change about, how you're doing it? Do you need to just take the curriculum and put it on the shelf for a while and come back to it later?
Right. Mm-hmm.
There's all those things. And so, I think as a teacher, that was a little bit harder to accept in some ways, because obviously I've been teaching a while. I should be able to do this.
Right.
But when it comes to your own child, sometimes, the rules don't work the same way. You have to just kind of stop and rethink. And so, my first year I found what was supposed to be a reading and spelling curriculum. I was going to use it for spelling. And I thought it was great, and because it was short and sweet, and I thought, well, this is great. And so I was going through it with him, and it was just pulling teeth. And I was like, okay, this should not be this hard.
Yeah.
So I put it away.
Mm-hmm.
And I revisited it once or twice, and then I was like, nope, it's still not working for him, because phonics didn't work for him, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was not a program that was going to work. And so it's gotten put away. So I probably, now that he's actually gone back and taught himself phonics, now that he's reading, I probably should pull that program back out and see how it works for him. Because I bet we would have a different success story now.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to what you were talking about at the beginning, was that, there's a certain time and place for everything, and that his pace and what he was ready to learn just wasn't right there at that moment. But we tend to blame the curriculum when the curriculum maker makes curriculum for an average child, or a certain child that they have, a standard. And there's only so much give and take that a curriculum has. And I know Dawn talked about this in her interview too, was just that we have to adapt, we have to change. And just like Amy was talking about, and that requires sometimes putting things away and taking them back out later. So that's great advice. So, Amy, in addition to homeschooling 2 kids and being a single parent, you have a business, as well as you're going to school. Do you want to talk a little bit about that as we wrap up?
So I was blessed by God moving mountains and opening doors about a year and a half ago into a master's program to become an educational diagnostician. And so I have 1 semester left, and so this summer I will be able to start testing homeschoolers for learning disabilities and dyslexia and things like that. And so I'm really excited about that. I'm doing this through my business right now. I do private tutoring, and I've done classes in the past. I don't have any classes going on right now, but I am doing private tutoring and working with homeschoolers, not just in the United States. I actually have a student in Puerto Rico too. So,
wow.
But I have students all over the United States, and when I do start doing testing, that will be in the greater I-35 corridor, South Corridor, San Antonio type area. Just because that is something that I've done the research on it, and I just don't know at this point in time that it's going to be something that's going to be easy to implement online. I know some people are, and I just I'm not finding a way to do it to the quality that I would want to do it.
Yeah, and most special needs testing, it's a good thing to point out to parents that testing in person is much higher quality than if you would do it online. So that's definitely good. So hopefully soon, Amy will have her tutoring and consulting stuff on our website at spedhomeschool.com. But if you are looking for someone as a consultant to come alongside you to kind of help you set up your curriculum, we have tons of consultants that work with our community, as well as tutors, people that do testing, educational testing, as well as special needs testing. And and also just therapy providers as well. So check out our website definitely for those resources. So Amy, I just want to thank you for all of your insight and for sharing from your experience. I'm sure it's going to be an encouragement to many. It was just encouraging for me to listen. So thanks for your time.
Not a problem. Thank you, Peggy, for having me.
Yeah. All right. And definitely check out our website at spedhomeschool.com for more encouragement and resources. Bye, everyone.
What happens when a writer and former history teacher goes toe-to-toe with his best friend, a nationally touring stand-up comedian? Total carnage, that's what. 2 men enter and 2 men leave because that's how it works.
Actually, you get hilarious, real, and insightful conversations about life, history, culture, faith, and everything in between.
Join me, comedian Johnny W., and my pal, author and speaker John Driver for Talk About That at lifeaudio.com or wherever you get your podcasts.